My name is Herminia. It was Christmas Eve, and I stood in the center of the living room at my childhood home, holding a manila envelope with my ancestry DNA results. The room was filled with 16 of my relatives, their faces a mix of shock and silence as I prepared to shatter the long-held family secrets. I remember driving to this small town of Millfield, population 7,500, a place where everyone knows everyone's business. It was a 2-hour drive from my apartment in Riverdale. My parents' house, a charming but cold 2-story on Maple Street, had always seemed more like a stranger's home to me. As I pulled up, I parked behind my sister Ava's brand new BMW X5. My dad, Henry, had chipped in $15,000 for the down payment. Meanwhile, my car was an old, beat-up Toyota Corolla with a broken windshield wiper and a rattling engine. I knocked on the door, and my mom, Clara, opened it in her red Christmas apron. "Herminia, you made it," she said, giving me a quick, perfunctory hug. Inside, the living room smelled of cinnamon and roasted ham. But what caught my eye were the photos on the wall. There were 15 framed pictures of Ava at her dance recitals, her high school prom, and her college graduation. Henry beamed in each photo, his arm around Ava's shoulder. Not a single photo of me. Ava was sitting on the couch with her fiancé, Leo, who worked in finance at a local bank. They had just bought a house 2 blocks away. "Hey, Herm, traffic bad?" Ava asked, not really caring about the answer. I carried the apple pie I'd made into the kitchen. Clara glanced at it and said, "Oh, Ava already brought one. We probably don't need 2. I just nodded and walked to the dining room to find my seat. It was at the end of the table, on a rickety folding chair, while everyone else sat in the expensive oak dining set. Over the years, I'd grown used to this treatment. When I was 11, Ava turned 14, and she got the master bedroom with a balcony overlooking the backyard. I was moved to a small, cramped room in the attic. It was filled with old boxes and a lumpy mattress. I shared it with the off-season storage until I left for college at 18. Dinner was always the same. Ava ate the delicious roast beef and fresh vegetables, while I got the leftovers or a simple bowl of soup. "Ava has more energy for her activities," Clara would say. "You're not very active, Herminia." I wasn't lazy. I was just tired of being ignored. My 13th birthday was the most memorable in the worst way. I came downstairs expecting a cake and presents, but there was nothing. Clara apologized the next day with a cheap store-bought cupcake. 3 weeks later, Ava's 16th birthday was a grand party with a live band and a huge cake. I watched from the kitchen window, feeling more like an outsider than ever. I always thought I was the problem child, the one who couldn't fit in. That belief lasted for 28 years. Then, at last Thanksgiving, everything changed. My aunt, Vera, who was a bit tipsy after 4 glasses of wine, looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You were never a Thompson." Henry's face went pale, and Clara dropped her fork. The whole room fell silent. I left that night, my mind racing. I parked in the church parking lot, hands shaking on the steering wheel. I knew I had to find out the truth, so I ordered an ancestry DNA test kit. My parents were furious when they found out. Henry came to my apartment, his face red with anger. "Vera is just drunk and talking nonsense," he said. "Don't dig into this. It will only cause trouble." I looked at him and said, "Do I look like you, Dad? You have brown eyes and I have green." He had no answer. 3 weeks later, while going through old photo albums, I found a picture of Clara with a man I'd never seen before. His hand was on her shoulder, and they looked happy. On the back of the photo, it said Summer 2001, Thompson Reed Barbecue. Reed? I'd never heard that name. I did some research and found a man named Victor Reed in the neighboring town. He was a painter, 55 years old, with green eyes and a kind face. I called my great-aunt Mildred, who was 83 and as sharp as a tack. "Aunt Mildred, do you remember Victor Reed?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment and then said, "Yes, he was around when you were a baby. Then he just disappeared." I later found out from Vera that Henry had known I wasn't his since I was born. Clara had had an affair with Victor while Henry was on a long-term business trip. Henry decided to raise me but could never truly love me like he did Ava. Vera had wanted to tell me on my 18th birthday, but was threatened by Henry. 7 weeks after Thanksgiving, I received the email. Your ancestry DNA results are ready. My hands trembled as I opened the laptop. The ethnicity estimate showed 50% English, 20% Irish, 15% Scottish, and 15% French. Henry's family was Italian, and there was 0% Italian in my blood. I scrolled down and found a close family match, a man named Ethan Reed, 22 years old, who was my half-brother. Victor Reed was my biological father. I drove to Millfield to confront Clara. She broke down in tears and told me the whole story. Victor had been Henry's friend. When Clara found out she was pregnant, she cut Victor off and told Henry the baby was his. That evening, Henry called me, his voice cold. You had no right to do this, he said. I replied, no right to know who I am? You've punished me my whole life for something I had no control over. I decided to contact Victor. I sent him an email, pouring out my heart. After 36 hours, I got a reply. Herminia, I had no idea. I left because Clara told me to. I've thought about her and that time for so long, he wrote. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in the middle. When I saw him, I felt a strange sense of familiarity. He looked at me and said, you have your grandmother's eyes. We talked for hours. He told me about his life, his work, and his family. I told him about my job at the local library, my apartment, and my struggles. Ava called me that evening. Mom told me everything. Is it true? She asked. I said, yes, it's all true. She was silent for a moment and then said, I'm sorry, Herm. I never realized. I told her I was going to Christmas, despite Henry's warning. She said she'd be there with me. Back in the living room on Christmas Eve, I took a deep breath and opened the envelope. I took a DNA test and these are the results, I said. My ethnic breakdown shows no Italian blood. Henry is not my biological father. My real father is Victor Reed. The room was dead silent. Henry's face was a mask of anger and shame. Clara sobbed quietly. Ava stepped forward and said, is that why you never loved her the same, Dad? Henry sank into the recliner, his head in his hands. I tried, he mumbled. I really tried. I looked around the room and said, I'm not asking for an apology. I just want you all to see me for who I am. I'm not the difficult child. I'm just a woman who finally found the truth. As I walked out of the house, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I knew who I was. I was Herminia, and I was finally free. In the months that followed, things slowly changed. Henry became quieter, spending more time in the garage. Clara started seeing a therapist and called me more often. Ava and I grew closer, and she even put up some of my old photos on the wall of her new house. Victor and I met regularly at the coffee shop. He introduced me to Ethan, and we quickly became friends. Ethan was a funny and kind-hearted guy, and it was amazing to have a brother. I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Lewis. She helped me work through the years of pain and self-doubt. She said, you didn't break the family. You just let the truth out. Now, as I look at the 4 photos on the wall of my apartment, a picture of me at the library, one with Victor, one with Ethan, and one with Ava, I know that my life has a new shape. I'm no longer the girl who felt like an outsider. I'm a woman who has found her place in the world.